The funeral was packed with familiar faces, some truly mourning, others just going through the motions. This was the burial of Alberto Monteiro, a real estate tycoon known as much for his fortune as for his iron-fisted grip on the family. Inside the mansion, the scent of flowers mixed with the weight of silence. His legitimate children, Carolina and Augusto, stood dressed in impeccable black. But behind their teary eyes was one thing: hunger for inheritance. The will hadn't been read yet, and nobody could imagine how one sealed envelope would tear their perfect world apart. The family lawyer, Mr. Tavares, was called into the late patriarch's office to read the will. His face was tense. From his leather briefcase, he pulled out the official document. Everything started off as expected: distribution of properties, instructions for investments, donations to charity. But then he stopped. From his inside pocket, he pulled out a red wax-sealed envelope. This, he said, was a handwritten addendum by Mr. Monteiro, made 3 months before his passing. He instructed that it only be opened in the presence of someone never before mentioned in this family. The room fell silent. Who was this person? The name written on the envelope was Rafael Monteiro. At once, glances flew across the room. Matriarch Lucia pressed her lips tight. Augusto scoffed. Carolina's eyes widened. Rafael. Who the hell was Rafael? One of the housekeepers whispered, "I've heard that name before." Most acted clueless. But the lawyer continued. Rafael Monteiro was recognized by Alberto as his son, born from a relationship prior to his marriage to Lucia. And more, he left something very important to him. The tension was electric. Carolina screamed, "This is fraud! That will is fake!" But Mr. Tavares had evidence, and Rafael was on his way. Later that day, the bell rang. A young man entered, calm expression, firm gaze. It was Rafael. He was tall, well-dressed, but his eyes held something the others lacked: truth. He handed a key to the lawyer, a key sent months ago, anonymously. With it, they opened the old safe of Alberto Monteiro. Inside were personal belongings, a handwritten letter, a recorded video, and a second will, dated, signed, registered. Its contents froze everyone in place. They played the video on the living room TV. There was Alberto Monteiro, already sick but very lucid. "If you're watching this," he said, "it means I'm gone, and it's time for the truth. Rafael is my son, just as much as Augusto and Carolina, maybe even more. He never asked me for anything. That's why he deserves it all." His eyes were firm, resolute. The lawyer then read the second will. Rafael would inherit most of the fortune, the companies, the properties, the shares. Carolina and Augusto would receive a symbolic sum under one condition. If they contested the will, they'd get nothing. Lucia fainted. Augusto punched the wall. Carolina wept with fury. Rafael smiled. Justice at last had begun. Rafael's presence in that room was more than a surprise. It was a threat, not because of who he was, but because of what he meant: the collapse of a carefully curated family image. He hadn't grown up in wealth, nor attended elite schools like his siblings. He was raised by his mother, Maria Clara, a woman discarded by Alberto Monteiro under one condition: silence. In exchange for money, she agreed to disappear. Rafael knew who his father was, but he also knew he wasn't wanted. He was a stain, a reminder, a secret. He watched his mother cry quietly at night, and in those tears, a fire grew inside him, a fire that one day would become a promise: "I will be seen, and they will regret everything they did." As a teenager, Rafael tried to reach out to his father. He wrote letters that were never answered. He even went to the company once, only to be thrown out by security with a cold warning: "This place isn't for people like you." That day left a scar. Rafael worked, studied, and cared for his mother all at once. While Augusto drove sports cars and Carolina vacationed in Europe, Rafael shared a tiny room with books and broken dreams. Rejection shaped him, but it didn't break him. Instead, it sharpened him. He became resilient, strategic, and above all, unshakable. One day, he swore to himself that the Monteiros would know his name and mourn what they'd lost. When Maria Clara fell ill, Rafael did everything to save her. He sold his possessions, took out loans, begged for time, but it wasn't enough. She passed away in silence, buried without flowers, without closure. Her funeral had only 2 neighbors in attendance. Not a single Monteiro showed up. That was the moment when pain turned into purpose. Rafael no longer cared about wealth. He wanted vindication for his mother, for the years stolen from them both. She had carried a burden alone, and he would make sure the Monteiros would never forget it. They buried the truth, but the truth came back wearing his name. After the will was revealed, Rafael didn't gloat. While Augusto raged and Carolina threatened lawsuits, Rafael stayed silent, watching, calculating. He didn't need to scream. He had already won the first battle, but he knew better than to believe the war was over. The Monteiros would strike back. They would dig through legal loopholes, bribe judges, pressure the lawyer. Rafael needed to be ready. He wasn't just the forgotten son anymore. He was now the most dangerous person in that mansion. Even with the second will in hand, Rafael understood that the path ahead was far from easy. The Monteiros couldn't bear the thought of losing, especially not to the maid's son. Their eyes, full of disgust and disbelief, reminded him that being the rightful heir wasn't enough. He had to become untouchable. So instead of celebrating, Rafael began preparing. He gathered evidence, found old witnesses, dug up past contracts and letters, because the Monteiros were preparing their revenge, and he would be ready for it. The rejected son had returned, and this time he would be impossible to ignore. For years, the Monteiros built an untouchable reputation. Elite business figures, praised by the media, admired in social circles. Lucia Monteiro was considered a symbol of elegance and philanthropy. Carolina, the brilliant law graduate with strong values. Augusto, the young, visionary entrepreneur ready to take over his father's empire. But behind those polished smiles lay an unspoken pact. They all knew about Rafael. They all knew about the woman their father once loved, and they had all agreed, silently and cruelly, to erase them from existence. The Monteiro family wasn't perfect. They were perfectly staged. Behind closed doors, the truth was even darker. Carolina used her family name to push shady contracts in her law firm. Augusto funneled money from the company to fund drug-fueled parties and lavish getaways. Lucia? She wasn't the saint she pretended to be. She manipulated her husband with emotional blackmail, backed by political favors and secrets. Each of them clung to their fake image like a lifeline. Rafael's arrival wasn't just a threat to their inheritance. It was a wrecking ball aimed at the very foundation of their lies. With the new will revealed, the cracks started to show. News outlets caught wind of the secret son, and within hours, the internet exploded with headlines. The bastard who inherited it all went viral. Carolina tried to control the narrative. At a press conference, she stated, "We've never heard of this young man." Her voice trembled, but not from emotion, from fear. Within days, bank statements leaked, monthly payments to Rafael's mother, labeled as external assistance. She wasn't just aware, she was involved. Her mask shattered, live, in front of the world. Augusto, meanwhile, spiraled. He suspected Rafael of leaking the information. He deleted files, burned emails, bribed ex-employees, but the damage was done. Rafael didn't need to lift a finger. Truth was a wildfire. Every buried secret, every hidden document now surfaced. Lucia withdrew into the mansion, refusing to speak to her children or the press. She watched old home videos, clinging to memories of a time when their empire was untouchable, but now the illusion was dead. The world saw them as they truly were. Rafael watched it all unfold from a distance. He didn't need revenge. He was the revenge. His existence alone unraveled their lies. The Monteiros, once media darlings, were now the subject of mockery. The mask of the perfect family had fallen, revealing something ugly, rotting beneath. And the bitterest truth of all? It was real. For the first time, the world saw them not as gods, but as people who destroyed lives to protect their image. And Rafael, he was no longer in the shadows. He was the storm they had tried to ignore. From a young age, Rafael knew the world wasn't fair. Some were born with everything, others with nothing but silence. He grew up surrounded by absences, a missing father, a missing last name, missing respect. His mother told him he was special, that he was strong, but deep down a quiet question haunted him. Why wasn't I wanted? While other children had balloons and cake, Rafael had a candle in a homemade dessert. Each birthday was a reminder. He existed for someone, but not enough to be acknowledged. The Monteiro name, the one he never spoke aloud, was his invisible scar, a silent wound that reminded him he was half of a story no one wanted to tell. The worst part of rejection wasn't the lack of love, it was the presence of contempt. Once, Rafael passed Carolina on the street when she was a law student. He smiled, hopeful. She looked at him, frowned, and turned away, like he was some beggar. He knew everything about her Her name, her awards, the headlines, she acted like he was nobody. That moment hurt more than anything. And Augusto? He was worse. When he found out about Rafael, he convinced their father to keep him hidden. "He'll ruin everything, Dad. He just wants money, get rid of him." Rafael was young, but he understood. That day, he swore they'd all know his name one day. Every door that slammed in his face became another layer of armor. Rafael applied for jobs at Monteiro Corporation 3 times. Never got a call. Used fake names. Still nothing. Then he learned he was blacklisted internally, labeled not recommended. The company that should have been his future was forbidden. Instead, he worked in bakeries, construction, delivery. Studied at night, exhausted but determined. Every dollar earned through sweat was cleaner than all their blood money. The weight of injustice didn't crush him. It forged him. Then came the final blow. His mother, weak and coughing blood, needed urgent care. Desperate, Rafael went to the company one last time, tried to see his father. Augusto stopped him in the lobby. "Still at it, Rafael? Accept it. You're just his mistake. That's all." Rafael didn't speak, just stared, recording every word, every detail. He walked away heartbroken and full of resolve. That pain, that humiliation, one day it would be returned, with interest. The pain never left, not even after his mother's death, not even after the truth came out. Rafael still carried the weight of injustice. The Monteiros had lived their lives freely while he stayed awake in hospital rooms, holding his mother's hand, listening to her apologize for not doing more. But Rafael knew she did everything. The ones who failed were the powerful, the ones who chose to forget, to deny, to hide. Now, with the will in his hands and the world watching, Rafael didn't just want the name. He wanted the truth burned into it, that the bastard son, rejected, abandoned, was the only one who truly honored his father's legacy. Augusto Monteiro had always been the golden child. He was told he'd inherit the company, that he had killer instincts, a lion's mindset, a real Monteiro. But now, for the first time, he felt something new, fear, not just nervousness, a hot, bitter, suffocating fear. Monteiro was no longer a name that meant safety. It was now tied to scandal. The media hounded them with questions about the bastard son. Investors called asking who Rafael was. Every question was a needle to his pride. He told himself it was temporary, that Rafael was weak, that the law would fix this. But deep down, Augusto knew this loss wasn't going anywhere. Carolina tried to act composed. She posted inspirational quotes, recorded interviews, and smiled for the cameras. But her hands trembled when no one was watching. She reread every old email, every shady transfer, every dark little secret she had buried. Lawyers warned her, if this goes to court, he has evidence. For the first time, Carolina saw what it felt like to be powerless, to be doubted, to be unseen, exactly how Rafael had lived his entire life. Lucia Monteiro, the matriarch, was unraveling. She had always run the show, from dinner menus to corporate meetings. Now, she was a ghost in her own home. Calls from powerful friends stopped. Invitations dried up. Reporters knocked, asking about Rafael, about Maria Clara, about the past. And when she tried to answer, her voice cracked. Each day, the fear grew. She took pills to sleep, avoided mirrors, because she knew the judgment had arrived, and she had built this moment herself, lie by lie. The most terrifying part? Rafael didn't even lift a finger. He didn't threaten them, didn't shout. He just existed, and his existence alone tore their world apart. Rafael walked the company halls calmly, greeted staff with grace. Some of the older employees smiled at him. A few even cried. He didn't need to humiliate them. He didn't have to seek revenge. His calmness was louder than any act of violence. They expected rage. He brought dignity, and that broke them. Then came the unraveling. Carolina lost a major client. Augusto's name surfaced in a financial investigation. Lucia was seen crying in a cafe, begging an old friend not to leak information. The collapse had begun, not from Rafael's hand, but from their own fear. That fear made them sloppy, made them crumble. And Rafael? He simply watched, quiet, cold, steady. Their fear was his fuel. And the best part, the real reckoning hadn't even started. Right after the new will was read, the Monteiros launched their counterattack. Carolina hired one of the top law firms in the country to challenge the will, claiming their father had been mentally unfit. Augusto rushed to court, filing a motion to freeze asset distribution. Their goal was clear: stall the process long enough to dismantle Rafael's victory. What they didn't know was that Alberto had foreseen all of it. In the will, he included a clause: if the New Testament is not approved by a judge within 15 days of my death, it becomes void, and all assets go to charity. The countdown had begun. Rafael now had 2 weeks to make it official, or lose everything. Lawyer Tavares called Rafael in with urgency. The approval had to be quick, flawless. One delay, one misstep, and it was all over. But Rafael didn't flinch. He gathered every piece of evidence Alberto had left behind: videos, letters, medical records, witness statements. He contacted people from his mother's past, nurses who had cared for Alberto. Each proof was a shield to protect the will. Rafael knew justice wasn't enough. He had to make it bulletproof. Meanwhile, the Monteiros tried everything to sabotage him. Augusto leaned on a judge for favors. Carolina leaked lies to the press about Rafael's unstable history. But Rafael wasn't new to this war. He didn't have connections, but he had truth, and truth in the right hands is unstoppable. When the assigned judge received the full dossier, including a heartfelt video of Alberto speaking clearly and lovingly about Rafael, it became undeniable. The man knew exactly what he was doing. The Monteiros were running out of time. Each day added pressure. The media turned it into a courtroom thriller. Hashtags trended: Justice for Rafael, Stolen Legacy, The Forgotten Son. Public opinion shifted. Journalists, influencers, even celebrities began voicing support. But the clock didn't care. With just 48 hours left, news broke. The presiding judge had a mysterious accident. A replacement was assigned, a man with close ties to Lucia. The Monteiros weren't done playing dirty. Rafael needed a miracle, or a move they'd never see coming. The night before the final hearing, Rafael arrived at court with something he had kept hidden, a video never seen before, recorded by Alberto from his hospital bed, days before his death, facially verified and time-stamped. In the video, Alberto speaks directly to the camera. "If they try to silence me, know that Rafael is my blood. He's the only one who looked me in the eye, while the others only saw dollar signs." The court fell silent. The new judge, under media scrutiny, had no choice. The will was approved. The deadline met, just in time. Rafael had won. Not just the fortune, but the time he'd always been denied, turned now into justice. The will's approval struck the Monteiros like a hammer, not just legally but morally. Their empire didn't fall from a market crash. It crumbled under the weight of truth. Carolina Monteiro, once celebrated as a paragon of legal ethics, made headlines not for courtroom wins, but for secret payments and exposed lies. The media unearthed conflicts of interest, shady deals, and even forged documents. The Bar Association launched an investigation. Clients dropped her. Her partners abandoned her. In mere days, the woman who once gave TED Talks on justice became a joke in legal circles. Her arrogance had poisoned her, and she drank every drop. Augusto tried to fight back. He gave tearful statements, tried to spin the media, but no one bought it. Rafael didn't need to speak. He let the documents do the talking. Files from company servers revealed years of embezzlement, lavish spending, and a deep-rooted money laundering scheme. One rainy morning, police knocked on Augusto's door. Cameras rolled as he was led away in handcuffs. The cheers he expected never came. Only silence. Friends vanished. Business partners ghosted him. His influencer girlfriend issued a breakup statement online. "I had no idea." His fall wasn't just financial. It was public, brutal, final. Back at the mansion, Lucia drifted through rooms like a shadow. Once commanding, now ignored. Even the housemaids avoided her. The woman who ran the estate like a queen now ruled over silence. She read the society columns that used to praise her, now filled with ridicule. Invitations stopped. Her social throne was gone. Worst of all, she watched Rafael, the boy she denied, erased and scorned, rise as the rightful heir, not just to the fortune, but to the family name. When Rafael visited her after the court's decision, she tried to maintain composure, but her eyes told the truth. Her pride was broken. She was no longer the matriarch, just a woman on the wrong side of history. The public was ruthless. Carolina's video statements were remixed into parodies. Augusto's arrest became a meme. The Monteiro legacy, built over decades, was reduced to ashes in weeks. Their name, once tied to power and prestige, now reeked of corruption. Rafael, however, remained silent. No parties, no interviews. He quietly restructured the company, firing the old guard and promoting overlooked workers. His calm, professional conduct stung even more than vengeance. Each move reminded the fallen Monteiros that he didn't just win, he deserved to. The proud had fallen completely. Not only had they lost wealth, status, and control, they lost their story. They were no longer the protagonists, just disgraced villains. And the cruelest part? It all started with a name on a piece of paper, a name they tried to bury, now etched in gold at the company entrance. Rafael Monteiro, CEO. The story they tried to erase was now the story everyone knew. For a family built on appearances, that was the harshest punishment of all. While the world watched the Monteiros fall, few knew Rafael still had one final weapon, a card he had kept hidden from the start. He never fully trusted the system. Not even the court's ruling felt safe. That's why, when Alberto Monteiro first reached out to Rafael in secret before his death, Rafael documented everything. But that meeting wasn't the real turning point. At the end of their conversation, Alberto handed Rafael a small rusted bronze key and said only one sentence: "If things go wrong, go to the old house. You'll know what to find." At the time, it made little sense. But after the funeral, Rafael remembered and followed the clue. The old house was a forgotten family property in the countryside, not even listed in the company's latest records. A dusty estate, untouched for years. Rafael went alone, quiet, methodical. He explored the house room by room, walking through cobwebs and broken furniture, until in the old office he found a loose bookshelf. Behind it, a metal box. The key fit perfectly. Inside, no cash, no jewelry, just papers, dozens of letters, and one USB stick. It was Alberto's private archive, a diary of truths he never had the courage to make public. Among the documents was a handwritten confession. Alberto admitted Rafael was his legitimate son, born from a true love with Maria Clara. He explained he only denied him under pressure from Lucia, who had threatened to divorce him and take half the empire. There were also records of secret payments, letters filled with regret, and most damning of all, audio recordings. In one, Augusto says, "That bastard will never sit in my chair. If he shows up, I'll handle it." In another, Carolina proposes faking a new will. Rafael held pure dynamite in his hands, and he waited patiently for the right moment to strike. He didn't use it immediately, not even after the court ruling. Rafael wasn't seeking petty revenge. He wanted a final, undeniable justice, one that couldn't be buried. So he waited until the Monteiros began to resurface, trying to rebuild their images. And then he acted. He called a press conference. The media assumed it was a celebration. Instead, it was a reckoning. Rafael showed the videos, played the audios, read the letters, name by name, sentence by sentence. It was not a victory speech. It was a public execution of their reputations. The reaction was swift. Every media outlet ran the story. Social media exploded. Any remaining defenders of Carolina and Augusto were silenced. The evidence was raw, impossible to deny. The audio clips revealed a family willing to erase a brother, calculated and cold. Carolina's image shifted from role model to fraud. Augusto became the threat. Lucia, the silent accomplice. Rafael didn't say much that day. Just one line: "My father stayed silent in life, but he left me everything I needed to speak for him." After the press conference, Rafael Monteiro's name wasn't just known, it was respected. For years, his existence had been denied, his name erased from dinners and documents. Now he was the name on everyone's lips, not just as a legal heir, but as a symbol, a reminder that truth can be buried, but never killed. Rafael didn't rise overnight. He built his strength slowly, brick by brick, in silence. Every sideways glance, every whispered insult only made him stronger. But now, the whispers had stopped. The same people who once said he didn't belong were now forced to listen and learn. At first, his presence still unsettled some. In boardrooms and conferences, old names squirmed in their seats. But Rafael stood tall, looked them in the eyes, and introduced himself proudly. "Rafael Monteiro." Yes, that one. His voice calm, his gaze steady. He didn't wear revenge on his sleeve. He wore resilience. While the rest of the Monteiros hid behind walls and silence, Rafael walked into the spotlight. But he didn't come for applause. He came to build, to turn the company and its legacy into something that mattered, something honest. The turning point came when Rafael officially took the helm as CEO of Monteiro Group. A small ceremony, no pomp, but every moment rich with meaning. Longtime employees, many overlooked for decades, were present. Some cried. They remembered when Rafael was turned away at the door. Now he held the key to every door. He promoted veterans, cut ties with corrupt partners, and founded a new division for corporate responsibility. Under his leadership, Monteiro Group stopped being a symbol of status and became a beacon of redemption. But Rafael's return wasn't just professional. People came forward with stories. Childhood friends, professors, neighbors. They painted a portrait of a boy who never gave up, even when the world tried to erase him. Rafael listened, humbled. More than wealth, more than legacy, what he wanted was simple: to belong, not as the mistake, but as someone who mattered. And now, he did. His voice no longer needed to shout. The world leaned in to listen. In the end, the bridge-jumping bastard, as Augusto once cruelly called him, didn't just survive. He swam, climbed, and rose, higher than they ever imagined. From the top, he looked back at all they tried to steal from him and smiled, because his return wasn't just a comeback. It was a reckoning, a resurrection, a declaration. You can forget someone, but that doesn't mean they disappear. They expected fury. They thought Rafael, now in power, would come for blood, would humiliate them like they had humiliated him. They braced for public takedowns, scandals, and lawsuits. But Rafael had long understood something they never would. The sweetest revenge is quiet. It doesn't scream, it stings, it doesn't attack. It rises. He didn't need to ruin them, he just needed to leave them behind. At the first board meeting under his leadership, Rafael arrived wearing an old suit given to him by a college friend. No grand speeches, just, let's begin. He laid out his vision, ending Augusto's shady contracts, opening social initiatives, and dedicating company profits to educational programs for underprivileged youth. No personal jabs, no drama, just decisions, deliberate and final. Every move was a clean cut from the past. No mercy, no mess, just evolution. At the company's annual event, Rafael called two unexpected names to the stage: a former security guard who once defended him and his mother's old secretary. These two people taught me the meaning of respect. Today, we honor them. The crowd erupted in applause. In the back of the room, Lucia Monteiro sat quietly, shrinking into her chair. She understood. The boy she had erased didn't need revenge. He gave grace. And that was worse. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was devastatingly elegant. Carolina withdrew from the public eye. Her law firm lost clients. Augusto filed for bankruptcy. Lucia moved to the countryside, far from cameras and questions. Rafael didn't destroy them. Their own actions did. And that was the true beauty of sweet revenge. When the victim doesn't retaliate, but thrives. When he doesn't match cruelty with cruelty, but with clarity. Rafael became what the Monteiros never imagined, a man bigger than the pain they gave him. In his first major speech, Rafael stood tall, the weight of a lifetime behind him. He looked at the crowd and said, "For years I dreamed of justice, but real justice isn't about bringing them down. It's about rising so high, you no longer need them." The applause was thunderous, not just for his words, but for the man he had become. Not a symbol of vengeance, but a reminder. Sometimes the best revenge is peace. Some truths can be buried, silenced, denied, but they never die. They wait. And when they rise, they don't come back with rage. They come back with purpose. Rafael's story is not just about revenge. It's about identity, dignity, and rising above the ashes of abandonment. Real justice isn't loud. It doesn't always come from courts or headlines. Sometimes true justice is the quiet strength of someone who chooses to build, not destroy. To stand tall, even after being broken. To walk past those who tried to erase you and not look back. The sweetest revenge isn't humiliation. It's evolution. It's looking your past in the eye and saying, "You didn't break me, you built me." So if life ever casts you out, remember this. You don't have to fight dirty to win. You don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to survive long enough to return stronger than they ever imagined.